Now, there is one other thing that I'd like to talk about here in terms of how to put it together right. And we've talked throughout the entire program about short and long-term debt, haven't we? And I've created a little diagram, and what I'd like you to do is take a look at it. I call it the snake on the ramp for obvious visual reasons, huh? It's a benign snake, okay? But we've broken it into three parts, okay? That's what I'd like to take a look at. What type of asset are we acquiring? How are we going to finance it? And how's it going to get paid off? And if we can get those, football teams, have you ever seen when they're in the huddle and the quarterback is calling a play and they look down and they've got this little thing strapped on their wrist? What is it? Playbook. It's the playbook. It's a micro version of the playbook. If we could have this diagram sort of stamped on everybody's hand, if everybody would put that down in the middle of the table, when we sat down with a lender and a borrower, and everything else that got put together, if we then checked it against this little graph, we would probably end up better off, in my opinion, because we'd be matching, and that's what we're really trying to do, isn't it? Match what? What are we trying to match? The life of the asset with the life of the loan. Isn't that right? If it's a short-term asset, we're going to use what? Short-term money. If it's a long-term asset, we're going to use long-term money. And that's what I've created here in this picture. I created three asset categories, didn't I? At the bottom, the foundation, fixed assets. These are the things, what are these? B&M. Bricks and mortar, huh? Bricks and mortar. And how are we going to finance them? Equity. See, you can't beat equity. If you've got equity, we don't have to have any more discussion. You can do what you want. But that's one of the beauties of capitalism. It allows us to create something of significant value, starting with what? Practically nothing. An amazing system that we stumbled on a couple hundred years ago, which has given us a leg up in terms of the world economy. It's a really amazing process that we've been talking through here. It truly is. Equity is what it's all about. Most of us are trying to create capital. We don't already have it, right? But if you do have it, wonderful. But if you don't, and we're buying fixed assets, let's use what kind of debt? Are you reading across with me? Long-term debt. And if it's long-term debt, we're going to pay it back out of what? Profits over a period of time. We don't get a 3-month mortgage, do we? We get a 30-year mortgage or a 20-year mortgage. So we pay it off over time. The next group of assets, permanent current assets. An interesting concept when we talk about current assets. This is those increases in what? Inventory and receivables. In a seasonal business, they go up, and then if the season comes back down, you remember, we bought them, then we sold them and didn't replace them, and that's how we got our money back. But if the business is growing long term, we'll continue turning them, but we won't go all the way back down to where we was, will we? So we've got our inventory and receivables grow. Well, from one year to the next, that wedge of what's growing, we can't pay that out of cash flow because we'd have to sell it, and we need it to continue to grow. We're going to end up financing that as well. Equity, if we have it, always equity. Secondly, if it's a permanent current asset, let's use what? A permanent current. And what do we mean by that? You're my supplier. You want me to market your product? Grow with me. Give me more what? Let's talk our suppliers. They want us to sell their product? Then let's help us. Let's let them help us by growing our line of credit. And that will stay there as well, won't it? And if there's still anything left over, a kind of debt that's somewhere between long-term and short-term, which is what? Intermediate term. Intermediate term meaning what? 3, 5, 7 years maybe, 3 to 5 usually, and it works. And then fluctuating current assets. And what do I mean by that? I mean that seasonal business, right? That goes up and down. We buy the assets and then what do? Sell them. Isn't that right? And if we're going to buy them and sell them, that part of it that represents the season, we're going to finance that. If the season is a year, we're going to finance it with what? Short-term debt, which is less than a year, and we're going to repay it out of what? Cash flow. So long-term debt repaid out of cash flow. Intermediate-term debt, more than 3 to 5 years, still paid out. Long-term debt paid out of what? Profit.